Welcome, ambitious leaders, to another power-packed episode of The Executive Appeal. I'm your host, Alex Tremble, and I'm thrilled to have you join us today. This podcast is where we go beyond the ordinary, moving past the cliches of just work hard to actually uncover the true secrets of success at the executive level. Now, before we dive into today's interview, I have to ask you to just be with me for a second. That's some exciting news. As you all know, thanks to your incredible support, the Executive Hill podcast is now one of the top 5% most popular shows in the world. And let me be clear, this didn't happen by accident. It was you who made this happen. It will be you who determines the continued success of this show. So here's a call to action for our amazing leaders. If you enjoy this content, please bring us some joy today. We ask you for your support. Click the like button. Share your thoughts and questions in the comments section. And most importantly, share this episode with at least 2 friends today. Your engagement and enthusiasm keep this community thriving, and we couldn't be more grateful. Finally, I'm not just your podcast host, I'm also an award-winning speaker and executive coach. I spent years distilling the strategies and skills required to propel ambitious leaders like you to unprecedented heights in your career. So if you're seeking an engaging and motivational speaker, for your next event, look no further. I've had the privilege of addressing audiences all around the world, sharing insights that go beyond the surface to leaving long-lasting impact. Whether you're developing meaningful relationships with your colleagues, mentors, and other executives is your focus, or your primary focus on providing your audience with the strategies required to achieve exceptional success in the face of all of life's complex challenges, I've got you covered. Don't miss out on an opportunity to elevate your team and your stakeholders' potential. Visit alextremble.com and book me today for a speech that will equip your audience with the tools that they need to achieve their exceptional career goals. Let's make sure your next event is unforgettable together. Now, with no further ado, let me say today is a good day. See, today we have the always amazing, awesome, phenomenal Miss Jane Hanson.
Aww.
Jane grew up, we know.
Thank you.
Jane grew up in the rural Minnesota, coming to New York 3 decades ago to join NBC as an anchor and correspondent in New York. She is co-anchored Today in New York and hosted Jane's New York, which is a really cool name for a show, especially a big show like that. She's covered events ranging from the tragedies of 9/11 to the joys of the Yankee victory parades, to Wall Street, to Washington. She has interviewed presidents, business leaders, pioneers, prisoners, and celebrities, traveled across the world from Mongolia to going and diving into the deep depths, miles under New York City for her special report. Most recently, she has hosted a daily entertainment and lifestyle program, New York Live for NBC4. Jane is this woman, I think I'm running out of breath. Last thing I'm going to say is she has won 9 Emmys. Count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 Emmys. And now we are honored to have her here with us on the Executive Appeal. How are you doing today, madam?
Well, I don't know. That was such a long intro. I'm like, are we done? Are we out of time?
We'll stop doing cool stuff.
Hey, congrats being in that top 5% of podcasts. That is quite some achievement, Alex. It is, seriously, because there's so many podcasts out there and there's so many choices. So you've made it, man.
Oh, well, 2 things on that point, though. First, you're right. I think that the average podcast goes like 12 episodes before just shutting down. And we're now on 4 years. So super excited about that. And 2, you and I discussed before we got started, like, you're living my dream. Like, if there was one thing I could do, if I just won the lottery and I never had to work again, one of the things I would do is just interview leaders such as yourself. So if you know any presidents you can pass over to me, I greatly appreciate it.
Okay. You got it. We'll do that offline. I don't want to give away all the secrets.
Well, well, look, I want to. I know that you didn't become an Emmy-winning uh, television journalist by getting the easy questions. So I want to start off with one of the hard questions. Um, the reality is, I look around, and there are so many opportunities for people to ask engaging questions, to learn, to dive deep into a conversation, which you've done throughout your careers. But sometimes I think we're kind of worried on whether we should ask the question we really want to ask, or do we ask a softball question to make people like us? I think you've probably done both, but you definitely asked those hard questions. So my first question is, how do you determine when it's appropriate to ask the hard question to someone you're speaking to?
I believe that the only dumb or stupid question is the question you don't ask.
Mm.
And if you have, like I did, being in the news, the television news business for so long, you really owe it to your audience to ask the tough question. Now, you can couch it in the certain kinds of terms depending upon who the person is. But what are you there for? You're there to get information. You're there to tell a story. You're there to share something with the world. And if you're not going to get it by doing a bunch of softball questions like, "Oh, I saw your last movie. It was really good. Did you have a good time making it?" Like, okay, maybe they could tell you some wonderful secret story about making the movie, but that doesn't mean that you're going to get to the real juice of the thing, nor are you going to find out something about that person. So you have to ask the tough questions. And honestly, asking the tough questions is being authentic. It's
Mhm.
being real. And I never ask them in a way that was super tough or hard or mean,
Mhm.
but ask them in a way that really is all about, well, in journalism, you have the 5 W's and the H: who, what, why, when, where, and how. And have always found that the question that I got the best answers to was one word: why. Now, why can be a tough question. Like somebody tells you this thing that they've done, and you go, why? And it's like, why did you do it? Why did that happen? Those are tough questions. And so you can ask a question in a way that is non-threatening, not intimidating.
Mhm.
It's about the tone and the way you ask it. And I think that's what makes the big difference.
Well, I think I 100% agree with you, and I think that many people shy away from it because they're not sure if they understand how to ask it in a non-threatening way, right?
Right. Right.
Um, so there's the you issue. So like, how do I ask those questions and communicate very important information without being looking aggressive? There's
Mhm.
also the other side that you can't control, which is how that person interprets the question and the
Mhm.
context that they're living in their life. Because you could ask a seemingly I, I do this all the time. I may ask my wife a very simple question. I mean, no negative intent, but she just had a rough day, and now all of a
Right.
sudden, I'm attacking her. So
Yeah.
you can't control those external factors. So first, for yourself, how do you position those questions? Then what do you do when you don't know the context?
You Well, again, context is hard to know if you don't really know the person and you don't know a lot about their background and you don't know what's happened to them that particular day, etc. I think you just do the best you can, is really the bottom line.
Mhm.
But you can tell by the way people are reacting, the way that they look, the way that sometimes you can tell when their day isn't going so well.
Yeah.
And you don't want to add to it. But if you're in the position where it's your job to ask those questions, you got to ask them. And I do know that context can be very difficult.
Mhm.
So in a situation like you just described, put yourself in the other person's shoes. If you do that, then you will find that the question will come across in a way that seems friendlier,
Mhm.
less intense, and certainly not, abusive.
Yeah.
And that also comes along with this notion of listening, which is another key part of what we do in life. We need to listen, and we all need to do a better job of listening. If we did that, the world would be a much better place. We wouldn't be as polarized as we are right now. So, 2 ears, 1 mouth for a reason. So listen. And that gives you clues about what's going to work with somebody.
Well, you went exactly where I knew you were going to go is transitioning to that listen piece, right? Because even as you're communicating information to someone and or asking a difficult question, you can pay attention to them. You can look at their face, look at their body language, what's emotional intelligence, and then as you're still formulating the question or it's going out, you can start to make little adjustments as you're watching this person and seeing how they're reacting.
Right, exactly. And that's key. Now, so listening, I teach a lot about not only just communications, but executive presence. And everybody knows, what is executive presence? And obviously it's the way that we respond to somebody because we think that they are a leader. Executive presence is about leadership qualities. And one of the key ones is your ability to listen. How many times have you been talking to somebody and you'll see them maybe looking over your shoulder? They're not listening to you. They're looking for somebody else. Or you see them, they're just ready to pounce. They want to answer whatever you're talking about. They want to respond to it before you even finish. They're formulating an answer. And how can they do that if they haven't listened to you? So we need to think about how we're listening. And that listening can give you some very important clues about how you should then respond. Maybe somebody's gets emotional and you got a solution for them. By God, you're going to give them that solution. But maybe they're not ready for the solution. They just want you to have some empathy. And so it's really crucial that we learn how to listen well.
So President Bill Clinton, U.S. President Bill Clinton, he was famous for, like, everyone said, like, when he spoke to you, he was focused on you. He's shaking your hand, whatever he's zoning everyone out. And I love the idea of that. And years ago, I tried it, but I didn't feel like I could do it well because I almost felt like in my life at that point, I'm not the president. Like, there are other leaders who may be coming up to my, like, I know, not yet. Like, my boss might be looking at me or someone, like I may have to like pay attention to other people. Like, how can everyone do that? Like, how do you zone everyone else out, especially when someone's who you may be talking to for a while and other people are starting to build up around you?
I'll tell you what the secret is. The secret is to ask questions. Get to know that person. When you are, and I'm going to say to your audience, try this. When you focus on someone and you ask them questions, and you can start in a very simple way, like, I love the color of your shirt, Alex. What's that color mean to you? It's something a lot of men aren't brave enough to wear, but you are. Why? Then you tell me, and then I say, well, what else do you do that, represents maybe being a little bit outside of the box?
That's cool.
And then I would go, but I would keep asking you questions. Now, what happens is somebody walks away from that conversation, and I guarantee you, they're going to say to a friend, they're going to go, oh my God, wasn't that Jane the best? Now, they don't know anything about me. All they know is I've made them feel so good because of the way that I am interested and curious in them. I'm not kidding. It works every single time. And it doesn't matter who you are.
Yeah. And you don't feel that. One, I love that line of questioning. Actually, that was super slick. Hence why you have 9 Emmys. So do you ever feel, have you ever felt like you're talking to someone, you're engaged in that person? Have you ever felt the other eyes like just waiting to talk to you?
Of course.
Or there's someone else who you really got to talk to before they leave the room? Like, what do you do in those situations?
What I do is I simply say to the person, I say, I've loved talking with you, but I made a promise to speak to so and so, and I see they're getting ready to leave the room. So I've got to go talk to them. I will come back or I will find you again, but we need, because I want to continue this conversation. And it's being honest.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's being authentic. It's honest. We got to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Honesty is hard sometimes. Again, I like to push the envelope. Is honesty always the best policy? I don't think it is. 'Cause I'm a literalist. So I'm saying if someone says honesty is always the best policy, nah. Because if someone's about to rob me or something like that, hey, do you have money? And I'm like, you look a little sketchy. Man, I'm not going to tell you I have money. may not be honest with you right there, but
Well,
I
yeah. Well, when your wife says to you, how do you like this dress? And you
it's a
know
setup.
that they've gone to great work to make themselves look fabulous. What are you going to say?
So my wife knows me way too well now.
Yeah.
I'll be like, "Oh, that color is so beautiful," or yeah, I'll be very intentional with my words, and she's like, "Hold up, what did he not say?" Like she'll listen to what I say and see what I didn't say.
Well, I think that
I said it just because we
I
have
know
different
what you're
tastes.
saying, and sometimes honesty means that maybe you're fudging the truth slightly. You're not going to be dishonest. I
Mhm,
think that comes with us trying to not hurt other people's feelings. But I'm also going to say that sometimes if you do that and you don't tell them the truth, let's say that you're having a really an, an intimate conversation about your feelings, and you don't want to tell them something that you know is going to hurt them.
mhm,
But if you don't tell them, your behavior may ultimately
mhm. Tell him.
give it away,
Mhm.
and that will be more painful.
Yeah, yeah.
So I do think honesty, but honesty in a way that's not intended to be cruel. Honesty that's got kindness to it and empathy to it. And again, putting yourselves in their shoes, thinking, how would I receive this if this were coming to me? And
Mhm.
how would I want it said to me? And if you think about it that way, then honesty can work.
So two things on that piece. One, any of y'all, if you ever watched Young Sheldon, it's based on the younger version of Big Bang Theory Sheldon.
Yeah.
Hilarious. And he can be ruthlessly honest. And that is
Mhm.
not what we're talking about right now. We're not talking about ruthlessly honest.
No, we're not.
And you make me think of another piece about listening. So this is something you've seen a lot, and everyone probably sees this if you look at politicians. Someone will ask a question, the politician will answer the question, the crowd or somebody that, oh yeah, great, or the person, the journalist will say, oh, thank you for the answer. But if you paid attention, they didn't actually answer the question, right? And so I almost feel like that's my kryptonite because I really do pay attention to people and what they're saying. I notice when they're not actually answering the question that's being asked. Um, I want to ask you, like, how do you train yourself to do that? Because a lot of people don't notice when someone doesn't actually answer the question.
Well, I'll tell you the trick to that because I teach people how to do what you're saying, which is what we call bridging or pivoting. And there's a couple of reasons to defend it. There's also a couple of reasons not to.
Mhm,
But one of the things that happens is, let's say that somebody's doing an interview, and the interview, is going to be 5 minutes long. And the interview asks you a question, and you know that if you answer that question, you're going to go down, either you're going down a rabbit hole, or you're going to talk about something that you don't really, means you're not going to get your message out there.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to pivot back to what you came to talk about, because otherwise it's a wasted opportunity. And so I call that bridging, and I don't have a problem with doing that when you are literally trying to get some important message out, and it's going to take time and it's way off topic, blah, blah, blah. However, it also can be used because you know darn well you are not answering that question, because that question is going to lead to trouble. So, the trick that most people try to do is to come up with something that's so much more interesting that the interviewer and the audience never realizes they never answered the question.
Mm-hmm.
So that's and that's legitimate. Like sometimes, honestly, sometimes questions are stupid.
I feel you. The reason why it popped in my head. I recently was asked to sit in on a interview panel for one of the organizations I work with. They were interviewing a C-suite leader, and I listened on the interview, and everyone just like loved the person.
Mm-hmm.
And afterwards, I was like, you realize they didn't answer half your questions. Like,
Right.
I was taking notes. I'm like, they didn't answer this question. They were nice. They said all kind of other stuff, but I'm like, again, like I was trying to help them understand, like, you got to pay attention. That's why when interviewing, you should
Yes.
have a rubric, all those things, because some people are really good at this.
Yep. Well, most people aren't, but what I think that you always need to think about your audience and what do you really want that audience to hear? And again, I would say that a lot of people who are doing interviews don't really think about their audience as much as they think about maybe they could get some really great quote or something. But you got to always focus on what the audience wants and what they need to hear. And so if the line of questioning is not delivering for the audience, we're going to lose the audience for starters. They're not going to be engaged, or they're going to turn you off, or they'll tune out, because attention spans are only 8 seconds these days. But the other thing is you might have a whole list of questions that you want to ask. Many a time I've taken my list of questions and thrown it out the window, because the interviewee has said something that's so interesting that I just want to follow that line instead of going where I was going.
Yeah.
And that's a truly good interview when you can do that. That's what makes something exciting and scintillating and just something super, super good. But what I hate are the people who have a list of questions and they ask question number 1 and question number 2. And question number 1, the person you're interviewing says, "Oh yes, I did kill my mother." But question number 2 is, "So how does it feel to, to live in Florida?" And instead of like, "What? You're confessing?" I have literally seen, not quite that dramatic, but I've literally seen where people will say something and the interview goes to the next question without ever acknowledging the depth or the shock of what they just said. So,
well, that said, you did have 9 questions to get through, so we can't stay on one questions forever. I'm joking.
Right? Okay. I just feel like, what? So I was famous for just saying, boom, gone, questions out of here. And because it got much more interesting to go in a different direction.
What's funny is, honestly, this is how this podcast started. I had spent a lot of homework being very intentional with identifying which questions would pull out some really great information for the audiences. Again, this is almost now 4 years ago. And the first interview I did, I came ready to ask those questions. I asked the first question. None of the other 9 got asked.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna do better the next interview. Next interview, asked one question, went somewhere completely different, and it became like you said, it was so much more engaging to navigate the responses that were shared versus just to stick to my questions. And then to your point, you're also kind of getting at is that you have to know also when someone is not going to answer a question.
Right.
And if they're not going to answer the question, then maybe it's not worth your
Move on.
time trying to keep going after that same question.
Right. It's clear they're not going to answer it. And the other thing is, you can ask the same question in about 14 different ways.
Mm-hmm.
It's all the same question. So you try a couple of times and they're not doing it. And you just say, okay, we're moving on because it's clear that, and you can even say it.
Mm-hmm.
Say, it's clear that that's not an area you want to talk about. Point taken. Let's move on. So now the audience recognizes.
Just calling it out for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I wish more, again, this is my show, so I can talk about this stuff. I do wish that there was more of that I saw on TV and whatnot. I see people try it a couple times. One of my favorite journalists is Chris. Oh my God, Chris used to be on Fox News.
Chris Wallace.
Chris Wallace. I like he tried a couple times. He called out. Looks like you're not going to answer this, and like it was always, I think, very middle of the road. I really respected him, but I also see a lot of people who ask the question, who try to ask the question a couple times. They don't answer, they move on, and I know that the audience at times doesn't notice that the question isn't actually answered.
Exactly. But if you bring it up and say, okay, looks like you're not going there today.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we can and if it's a really important question and they're shying away from it on purpose, that's where you say, well, you're not answering that question today. Maybe tomorrow you'll be willing to, and then go to the next question. Because what it does is it forces the interviewee to say, okay, they got my number. Sometimes they'll say, look, I'm not trying to be evasive, but we're talking about national security here and I can't violate that. Yeah, right.
Well, another area I was so interested in chatting with you about is, again, in that same vein, is given the media cycle, given social media, given the world and how everything moves so fast nowadays. Like, how do you become a thought leader in today's world when literally anyone can call themselves a thought leader? And really quick, before you say anything, I was talking to a client last week who's going to bring me and my team in to do coaching for their organization. And they said, yeah, Alex, we're having a lot of challenges because the coaches we have on board, just no one thinks they're all that great. They're not really helpful. And we start looking into their credentials, and it's like they just called themselves a coach. Like, they had no background. So, like, how do you be a thought leader and actually have substance behind what you're talking about?
Actually have thoughts. So here's the thing. One has to earn that title. And they have to earn that title in a number of different ways. One is by actually being a leader themselves. Two is by actually being a visionary and articulating it well. A lot of people may be leaders or they may be executives, but they don't have a vision. And by vision, I mean, what do you see going forward? What are you doing with your company? What are you doing with your own personal development? Where are you actually having thoughts that are worth following? So you have to be professionally developed in order to call yourself a thought leader. You have to be an expert in your field. I mean, there's so many different qualifications about what it takes to be able to have that title. And you can't just call yourself that. So, I mean, it's one of those terms that, like, there's no criteria. There's no test you make. But you have to have people who respect you. which, by the way, gets to my basic point of all communication, is showing respect for another human being when you're speaking with them, no matter whether it's a wonderful conversation or a difficult and challenging conversation. You have to start with respect. And if you can't do that, then you need to figure out how, because respecting one another is, I think, the most important thing that we have to do.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, so 2 points on that point is I was giving a talk the other day on presentation skills, and I asked the audience, okay, let's say from 1 to 10, like that's your skill level. That's your skill. Okay. Your expertise is at a 10. Yay, excited. Yeah, right. Everyone. Okay, cool. Okay. But your communication skills are at a 3. Oh, where do you think the audience is going to rate your expertise level? At a 3.
At a 3. Yeah.
It doesn't matter how smart you are if you can't effectively communicate those ideas and concepts. So again, like you said, those communication skills are so crucial. And then on the other piece about the thought leadership, and you said that, you know, there's no criteria for it. I like to say, 1, I agree with you. And 2, on the other side, for those people who are thought leaders, I gave a talk a few years ago when I got to do one on leadership and strengths. And I was like, hey, how many people do your particular job, like your particular job in this state? Oh, well, few hundred people. Okay. So that means you are better at this thing than how many thousands of people? Thousands of people. How many people do you think in this country do what you do? Okay, maybe a couple thousand. Okay, so you're one of a couple thousand people who do what you do in a population of millions of people. It sounds like you may be a thought leader in your area.
Me?
You're
talking to the audience. I'm like, me? What?
And the audience was like, what are you talking about? No, I'm not an expert. What do you do? What you do at least 5 days out of the week. You do it more often than other people. So what's to say you're not an expert and someone else is? I pose that to you, but I'm a huge believer that there are so many more people who should be calling themselves thought leaders who aren't, and there are so many people who should not be calling themselves thought leaders but are.
So now you're talking about the ego.
Oh, yep. Okay.
All right. So the thing is that when I teach people about presentation skills, and they sometimes get, they feel like, oh, I've got imposter syndrome, I should not be the one talking, or they get something called glossophobia, which, by the way, is fear of public speaking, and 87% of us in the US at one point have it. What I say to them is, look, at this particular moment in time, with this group of people, you are the expert, which is why you're the person speaking. And so you must grasp onto that and understand that you have the right to be there, that you've earned the right to be there, and that they are there to listen to you. Now, the other thing that you're kind of dancing around is how we use our bodies and our voice to present information. This body language key component. Body language, meaning how you use your body and how you use your voice, is 93% of the way in which we resonate. And so all of that has to work together. And that's why, what you were just talking about, that's why they aren't communicating, because they're not using their body appropriately. Yeah, they got loads and loads of information, but they're delivering it in a way that's like, let me tell you now about how we should be communicating. It's just like, it doesn't work. So all of that has to be in sync.
Oh, I'm such a nerd. So first, 2 things. When you say body language, the first thing I think about when you say body language, I think of Ursula from Little Mermaid, she says body language. Okay, sorry. And then you said in sync. I think about in sync the band. I really got to grow up at some point. But Justin Timberlake is so cute.
It would take away your charm, so stop it.
Well, I want to open the floor for you. We've spoken about so much today, and I know that you got to jump off and jump on a line with I think President Obama or Biden, one of them, probably interviewing something like that. So, what thoughts, ideas, anything you'd like to share with our audience as we begin to wrap up?
What I want to say is, really check out your communication skills, everyone. Think about and what you can do. Like the biggest trick you can do is take your own phone. We've all got one. Record yourself speaking, and then take a look at it and pick on one thing, just one little thing that you'd like to fix that you think would be more interesting or make you more engaging. Maybe it's the way you don't use your voice very well, or maybe you've got some stupid gestures, or maybe you got a tick in your eye, whatever it is. I want you to take a look and say, oh, but I don't want you to be too hard on yourself either. That's why I just say one thing at a time, and just see how you come across. What's your perception of yourself? Because it's going to be different than what you think it is. And then work on making it better. And in your personal and your professional conversations, really listen to people, give them your full attention. We live in an overstimulated world. Stop being overstimulated long enough to calm down and actually speak and listen to your fellow human beings.
We did a lot of communicating today, and I know we both did a lot of listening. So thank you so much, Jane, for coming on and joining us here today. Again, my goal is to be more like you. So I appreciate all the advice, all the thoughts that you shared today, because I plan to implement them into my life as well. And
good. Yay!
Oh gosh. So everyone, if you enjoyed this episode, look, do us a favor, click the like, click subscribe, share your thoughts, your questions, your comments. We'd love to hear from you. Again, if you're watching this on LinkedIn, we are on LinkedIn. Please tag us and we love to chat with you. If you're watching on YouTube, YouTube is popping there too. So make sure you engage with us. Also, we talked a lot about the importance of people and having those relationships. And so if you haven't already, checked out my new book, Relationships That Work. You can find it on Amazon in the description below. You know where I'm going with this. If you found anything of value from today's conversation, don't just look back, reach back. Bring someone else to the table. Don't say that guy or that gal or that person over there should have been here. They would have grown if they would have been here. Don't do that. Don't be that guy, that gal. Bring the information to them and bring them to the information. Bring them to the party. We having our own shindig over here, and you not inviting them to the party. So invite them to the party, invite them to the picnic, and with everything I have with you, I encourage you to stay strong, stay positive, and definitely stay moving. See ya. Thanks for listening to The Executive Appeal with Alex Tremble. I invite you to follow The Executive Appeal wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow me, your host, Alex Tremble, across all socials or via email for exclusive webinars, courses, and in speaking engagements on continued topics of executive leadership. So until next time, stay strong, stay positive, and definitely stay moving.